Good morning, church. One thing I've noticed as we continue to meet virtually is that church is a lot different in this new age. For not only do I come to church alone, I come into a church that is empty. Yes, I take comfort in looking at the pews, and I can see where each person, each family sits, and I can picture you there. But it's not the same being in an empty church. When we come to church and gather together on a Sunday morning, the church is normally a warm, inviting place. I can tell you, with me coming here by myself week in and week out, this church is like an icebox. It's cold in here. It's lonely in here when we don't have the family together. The other oddity is I come each week and prepare these messages and deliver them to a church of nobody. I park right outside the front door. I'm not parking far away and walking up to the church and leaving the prime spots for you. Since I'm the only one here, I get the prime spot. We're hoping that this is not going to go on much longer. We're hoping that as we approach May, we get the permission to begin to join again together. And the good news is we're a smaller congregation. Hopefully we're able to social distance and we're able to still fill our pews and fit the church in. And oh, how we need to get back together. This morning, we're changing gears from our Matthew 26, 27, and 28 sermon series over the Easter season, and we're going to Galatians chapter 5. We're going to be looking for the next 9 weeks at the topic of the fruit of the Spirit, coming from Galatians 5, 22 and 23. For the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. This morning we're going to be looking at love. We're going to be looking at the first of the fruits. Did I just say fruits? You know, there are 2 different ways that people look at this passage. They look at it by saying fruits of the Spirit, meaning plural, and in that image you think of a fruit basket that's full of oranges and lemons and bananas and oranges and apples and strawberries and blackberries, and you get a whole big basket full of fruits. You know, folks, when I read this today, it did not say the fruits of the Spirit. I slipped up and said fruits. But what it is, it's the fruit of the Spirit. Instead of picturing before you a fruit basket full of a variety of fruits, think about a fruit basket full of bananas, a fruit basket full of apples, a fruit basket full of oranges. For when we look at the fruit of the Spirit, the first thing we're going to see is that it's one fruit, but many attributes. What was your introduction to love? I know what mine was. You know the Charlie Brown series? All those wonderful cartoons? What holiday did Charlie Brown dread the most? Charlie Brown and Valentine's Day. I went back through the internet today and I was searching Charlie Brown and Valentine's. I found many different cartoons that brought back many memories for me. One of them, Charlie Brown walks up to his mailbox. He drops the lid and he goes, "Any Valentines in there?" And he walks away, sticks his ear to the mailbox, and he hears, "Any Valentines in there?" He then looks and he goes, nothing echoes worse than an empty mailbox. There's another one in which Charlie Brown's back in the background, and there's a male and a female up at the front, and they're exchanging Valentine cards. And Charlie Brown, way off by himself, says, rats, nobody gives me a Valentine. The next frame, he's walking with his head down, and he goes, I wish there wasn't such a thing as Valentine's Day. And then he looks and he ponders off, and he goes, I know nobody likes me. He then, in the last frame, throws his head back, opens his mouth, spreads his arms, and goes, why do we have a Valentine's Day? What holiday did I dread the most as a kid? Yeah, I had a lot of similarities with Charlie Brown. I remember well in grade school making that Valentine's box and getting a shoebox and covering it with construction paper and cutting out hearts and putting hearts on it. And oh, how much work went into this box. Come Valentine's Day, you stick it up on the corner of your desk. Comes time where the teacher tells everybody to go out in the hallway and to get your Valentines and to pass them out. We're going to have our Valentine's party. Everybody would get their Valentines, walk around and pass them out. But you know, you only gave them back then to kids you liked. There was no such thing as fairness. There was no such thing as bullying. Back then, it was considered growing up. Back then, it was considered getting tough. Back then, you didn't have to buy a Valentine for everybody in your class. I remember opening up that Valentine box, and I'd get a token 2 or 3 out of the 24 in the class. All that work, all that effort to find out you're not loved. Where do you find love and acceptance? Nowadays, we have everybody that for them to show love, they're going to do this, and this is love. I love you. And you'll show that across the room. I love you. Can you remember your first love? That first time that you found out that those boys or those girls, they don't have cooties? And you can actually like them? This morning, we're going to start off our series of the fruit of the Spirit, and I'm going to begin by looking at that word fruit. So often we think of the fruits of the Spirit. We don't think of the fruit of the Spirit. But fruit is a singular word. It means one. There's one fruit. You can think about that basket of many, or you can think of the basket of one. The other thing I brought with me for today, and it's going to be here every week. I hope that we're able to meet together and you can see it in person. But I told Steve I was going to be stealing his ladder, because this ladder is a great example of the fruit of the Spirit. And as we look at this ladder, I'm going to take this little sign, and down there on the first step, which you can't see, I'm going to put the word love. And what we're going to do each week is we're going to grow this ladder. As I said, hopefully you all will be able to be here in person. We'll be able to see how the ladder grows. But the fruit of the Spirit is like this ladder. It's one fruit that the Spirit gives us. And what it is it's a stepping stone. It goes from one to the next to the next. I heard this many years ago, and I like the idea that as you look at love, joy, peace, patience. You can't have peace and patience until you first know love. You can't have joy until you know love. Love is the base. Love is the beginning. So the fruit is representative of that basket with one variety in it, or it can also be seen as a 9-step ladder. That in order to get to the top, in order to attain self-control, which will be in 9 weeks, you have to have all the predecessors before. Fruit is not a noun. We think of it as the fruit basket. We think of it as a noun. But instead, it's the fruit of our labors. It's the action that we put in. So as you think about fruit, think about work. Think about action. Think about deed. We have an action to perform. We have a work to proceed through, a work as Christians, as God followers. We are expected to be people of action, not people of just sitting in a pew. How are we doing at action? How are we doing at making our faith visible? Having our faith be intentional. What is the fruit that I put out? What is the fruit that people see as they look at me and my life? The first fruit that we want to look at is love. In the Bible, there's 3 types of love. There's brotherly love. There's love of a family, love of best friends. And that comes from the city Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love. The Greek word is philia. Do we have brotherly love? Do we have, as different shows show, bromances, where we are brothers? You give me a call and I'll be there for you. The other type of love that is in the Bible is eros love, E-R-O-S. This is where we get the word erotica. This is the word where we get, ooh, she is cute. She draws my eye. Did you notice him? It's a visual sense that they are good looking, that we are attracted to each other. And this is the love between a husband and a wife. This is not a brotherly love. This is not a love to share. But this is a love in a relationship. The third type of love that we see in the Bible is agape love. Agape love is total love. Agape love surrenders all. Agape love is love that we need to develop. We need to get a love that is within us. A love that is there that knows no bounds. If anybody that I've ever known has so much love, it would have to be someone like Deb. Deb is a person that she loves totally, to the point that to go down the highway and to see a truck full of pigs or cows and know they're on the way to market, it crushes her heart for those animals. For driving along with Deb and seeing a dead rabbit, a dead raccoon, a dead squirrel in the road. Deb is crushed when she sees those dead animals in the road. It doesn't do a lot of good when we're driving down the road and I see a squirrel or a rabbit and I step on the accelerator to go all the faster. Somebody that loves totally does not see a lot of humor in my speeding up the vehicle. How great is your love? We think of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter. 1 Corinthians 13 is shared in many wedding services. Faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. Love is patient. Love is kind. I had a girlfriend back in college. She said, Brian, let's sit down and let's read 1 Corinthians 13. I was in trouble when she said this. So we sat down and we took a look at 1 Corinthians 13. And she looks at me and she made a list. And she goes, love is patient. That's not you. Love is kind. That's not you. We went through the entire love list of 1 Corinthians 13. She let me know that I failed in every category. I'm sitting there going, why are we in a relationship? Well, guess what she proceeded to do? You got it. We broke up. We were no longer in relationship because I did not know love. Deb can tell you that by my reactions to seeing animals that are on the road, I don't know love. Because I do harass her, I do tease her with speeding up to hit them. I would like to think that from my days of college, from my days when we sat down and looked at the love chapter, I'm hoping that I've grown in my attribute of love. I'm hoping that when people look at me, they will see love towards other people. There's two ways our love needs to go. The first is not out. The first way our love needs to go is up. We need to have a vertical love. There was a time in Jesus' ministry where they were sitting around and they were always trying to throw Jesus under the bus. And they were always trying to get him to answer wrong. And in Matthew 22, the Pharisees and Sadducees, they came up to him and said, "Teacher, what is the greatest commandment of the law?" Now, what they wanted Jesus to say was, this is the greatest commandment. And you know, back in Exodus chapter 20 and Deuteronomy 5, there's 10 commandments. They wanted Jesus to say one of those was the most important, for all 10 were important. And they were so important, these 10, that what the church leaders had done in making religion all a work-based and a perfection-based is they took those 10 laws and they added and they added and they added to the laws to make it so that to be with Christ, you had to be perfect if you were to attain the letter of the law. So they want to know, which is the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. Leaders scratch their head and they're going, greatest commandment? No, that's what Jesus did is in saying the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God. He took the first 4 commandments. You shall have no other God before me. Do not make a graven image, or do not serve idols. Remember the Lord's name and keep it holy. And remember the Sabbath. If you do the first 4 commandments, you just did what Jesus said. We need, I need, you need to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. Where is your love? We can go back to 1 Corinthians 13. We can look at the list of love is and make a list and say, how do I perform? In Revelation, Jesus is looking at the church and he says, church, I have one thing against you, and that is that you have forgotten your first love. He wasn't talking about the relationships this way. He was talking about the first love, the relationship with Christ. Do you remember your first love? Do you remember falling in love with Jesus? Last Sunday, Deb and I were together and she's just bawling. And she's crying and crying and crying, and she's listening to worship music, and we had our worship time around YouTube and Facebook, and she's just crying. And I said, what is wrong? And she looks at me with tears and puffy eyes, and she goes, I just love Jesus so much. Folks, how much are we on that vertical relationship? How much is our first love with Christ? Do you love the Lord your God? Do you serve him? Do you show devotion to him? Are you bearing the fruit that he's given us of love? For the second commandment is just like it. Notice that as Jesus is answering this question, he's not saying the greatest commandment is done. He says the greatest commandment is, and the second. He doesn't even pause. He throws that word and in, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets, they hang on these 2 commandments. The second commandment is horizontal. Honor your mother and father. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not fornicate. And do not covet. If you follow these 6, that's commandments 5 through 10. These are all commandments that are based towards other people. Church, we've got the fruit of the Spirit. We have the fruit beginning with love. Love, 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 love. The gospel in a word is love. Oh, how we need love. How's your love meter, church? You remember that old carnival thing where you could go up and squeeze the hand grip and the little magi guy was in there and they had the meter that would say your love level was here or your love level was there. And you'd throw your quarter in, you'd grab that grip and hold on tight and it would go and it would say boom down here at the bottom or up here. What is your love meter? Can your neighbor see your love meter? Can your coworkers see your love meter? How about your wife? How about your husband? How about your kids? What do you show as your love meter? Today, we're just on that first step of the ladder. We've got a long ways